I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the willGather podcast. Finding freedom and redemption in revealing all of those things that we typically don't share with others in our caregiving. That is the mission and the movement behind Brutally Beautiful. This nonprofit organization was founded by Heather Zoccali. She is the co-founder of Brutally Beautiful and also the founder of No Barriers Caregiver Program. She is a survivor. She's a storyteller, author, retreat innovator, and a podcast co-host. She gives us permission to have that holistic healing, look at our self-awareness, our forgiveness, the ability to have humor, choose vulnerability, share deeply personal stories, and rediscover who we are outside of our caregiver role. They do this by their nature-based retreats, interactive workshops, and supporting caregiver communities. Heather and I talk about what brought her to advocating for caregivers and the superpowers that we have in us to heal and reset the narratives that we feel are imposed on us in our caregiving. The surprises we find when we forgive ourselves and empowerment that we feel when we take back our voices and have boundaries. We talk about all of the things and how we can rediscover our own voice and who we are. I want to share her story, and I would love for all of you to hear it as well. Here is my interview with Heather Zoccali. Hi, Heather. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I feel like we should be sitting with our cocktail, like our martini. that we were, so amazing that we got to spend that time together at the Care Colloquium. How did you like that? I know that it was so cool for us to all be together.
Yeah, it was such an awesome time, and I feel like it came at the right moment, like in the care space and everything, and so good to get to know people and not kind of be so isolated in it, and really hopeful. It gave me a lot of hope that there's all this energy and stuff, all these good vibes going into the care space. And it was also a really beautiful space in the fact that it's not competitive, you know what I mean? Like there's probably, I think now there's probably like 100 million caregivers. I think the 53 number is way outdated. And like there's enough for everyone.
Right.
There's people,
Yes.
and it's
We
not
need all of us. Yeah.
anytime soon.
Exactly.
So it was really beautiful to be around all that supportive, like kind of feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the martinis, yes.
I know. Oh, so good. I know. I thought the same thing. It was just like a celebration of the work everyone's doing and coming together, which was so cool to see. So, and then when we meet each other online or through work colleagues or Zoom or meetings and things like that. So the chance to be able to be face to face was super cool.
Yeah, I agree. It was really cool. It gave you a little more just a little zip in your step.
Yes, I know. So you wrote something a little bit ago, and when I read it, I cried, to be honest. And it's called A Love Letter to All Caregivers. So I'm going to read it. I want everyone listening to be able to hear it. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about all the things, and we're going there. We can go there. And so here you go. Dear Invisible Army, I want you to know I am here for you. I am your advocate, defender, and non-judgmental friend you may lean on. I hear your secret cries in the shower, cars, and bathroom stalls alone. I understand the frustration and sadness of what was and what is. I see when you are in the shadows and behind the scenes making sure your loved ones have the spotlight as you find your light fading. All 53 plus million of you. I feel your isolation, pain, guilt, shame, and loss of self. I share in your triumph of having 15 minutes alone. I grant you grace when you are barely treading water. I will emphasize self-compassion, for you are only human. I will breathe with you when the doctor brushes you off, because how could you, who are on the clock 24/7 and deal with crisis after crisis on a daily basis, possibly know what's going on with your loved one when you didn't choose to go into this field? I will advocate for you when your boss questions again, did something just happen? Yes, I will stay with you. Yes, it did just happen, and it will happen again and again and again. And thank you for the support and shared understanding. I will not apologize anymore with you for the chaos that is ours. I will stand beside you and we will embrace it. I will give you my voice to advocate for yourself. I give permission to you to start putting boundaries so that you may find your joy again. I empower you to dig into your trauma and acknowledge your grief. I will hold this safe space for you to begin your forgiveness journey of self and others. I give you light and love to fill the cracks of your broken heart and spirit so that you may begin to rebuild, both to become stronger and greater. I laugh with you at the healing power of dark humor. I will challenge you to find the beauty in this difficult life we lead. I will gladly conduct this hot mess express and advance us into the light. I want you to know I am here for you. I am your advocate, I am your defender, and non-judgmental friend you may lean on. Love, Heather. How do you feel when I read those words back to you?
I just think about the night I had at that time. I was not in a healthy work environment, and just stuff going on with my mom. And so I think about that morning. I get up early. I've always woken up at like 4 o'clock. And now I've come to love that because it's like my alone time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that 4 to 6, I'm like, ooh, it's quiet.
Yeah.
I can have my tea and meditate, and then I can get some work done, and I just kind of be by myself. And it just, like, I woke up and I felt like I needed to get it out, because I know I was struggling. It seemed like everybody around me was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we need to be kinder to ourselves. And so I think when I hear it, I get a little emotional, because I'm like, I'm making sure I'm reminding myself of, practicing what I preach.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I'm glad it has resonated with a lot of people. And I mean, that's what you hope, right? That through your brutally beautiful experiences,
Yeah.
you can share your stories and people relate. And that's what helps us get connected.
Yeah, it does. It does connect us. So thank you for writing them. And thank you for having the courage to share them. I think we oftentimes, it's hard to be vulnerable, right? Like, have you heard that term, like vulnerability hangover, where we'll like share something and then we're like, ooh, was that too much? Am I too much? Yeah.
I do. And one thing with that, like, I've always been pretty open. I'm not sure where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Probably rebellion in my younger years. My family like wanted to keep everything in. I was like, I'm going to talk. And so probably not from a healthy spot, but now it comes.
Yeah, it gives everyone else permission to be there, like we need it.
But,
yeah.
Like vulnerability, I love it. I think it's such a superpower. I know I say that a lot, but if you think about, and if you know me at all, or if you don't, like, nature is definitely my North Star. I mimic nature. Whenever I'm feeling like, even if it's just 15 minutes outside, everything changes for me. It's like, oh, okay, that's what I needed.
Yeah.
But if you look in nature, like, it's essential for vulnerability for something to grow. Like a crab, when it grows, it leaves its shell and it's vulnerable, but it's not going to grow unless it goes outside of that shell, right? Or trees, that green, beautiful part is when they start growing, and that's a really vulnerable part. So I think I want to help make vulnerability okay. Like, we're human. We all have the commonality. We suffer, we cry, we experience pain, sadness, guilt, shame, joy, happiness, bliss, all that stuff. And so sharing it it helps you grow, and that's essential. And vulnerability is essential to it. And again, we connect through those vulnerable moments. And what a beautiful gift that we're given that's free.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that is what drew me to you and your work, was that you created this place where you were doing that, and it gave us all permission to like join in that and witness that. How did you find yourself in that role of advocating for caregivers? That's a big one.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. Long story short,
Mm-hmm.
I've been a caregiver or cared for ever since I was 8. My dad had a major stroke and MS, and I found myself in kind of that youth caregiver place. And at the time, I didn't know it. Like, something's wrong. But again, my family didn't talk about anything. And now that I'm older and hindsight and know where my family's at and all that, my mom and brother, younger brother, had severe mental health issues. Still do. And so just growing up in kind of that chaos, I found myself the peacemaker, making sure, just being that emotional caregiver, really. It was a big part of it. And then when I left home, I went Wyoming, from Kentucky to Wyoming, and loved it. Have not left the West since then. And found myself, after being married and 2 kiddos, being cared for. I got super, super sick, like bedridden for about 5 years. Couldn't go take a shower by myself. I was in the hospital, like at 2-week month stays, and renal failure, seizures, my heart, everything was just completely failing. And they didn't know what it was. And so then, with some detective kind of sleuthing, so to speak, and getting functional doctors, we realized I live with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And with that comes this trifecta of usually POTS and seizures, and then you have your EDS. And so I was dealing with all that. And that's really when I noticed the effect it had on my family. I noticed the effect it's still lingering today with my boys. It affected literally every part of your life. If you're a caregiver, it's almost like you can't get away from it, And when you're sick and you're the one being cared for, easier to notice if you're watching that. And I saw my husband being stressed about finances and work, and the boys. Max, my younger, told me every time I heard a siren at school, I wondered if you were dying.
Wow.
Shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have messed you up, but let me see what I can do to put you back together again.
Exactly.
And that's heavy, and I mean, sirens are all a trigger for all of us, because of after that, when I got healthy. And it was weird because it was right as I was getting healthy, and we were like, oh, I've learned to never say life is smooth, because as soon
You
as
just
I
never know. Yeah.
shit hits the fan. And so that morning, it was March 10th, 2015. My 16-year-old at the time, Connor, my oldest, we were in, 16 and a mom. There's some tension there. And I look back now and I'm like, man, we were fighting over such stupid stuff. Like I said, you're not living up to your potential. You're great. And now, oh my God, that was silly. I shouldn't have even gone there, but hindsight. And he left without me being able to say, I love you, have a good day, make good choices. And that's what we normally would say. And then 5 minutes later, he was struck by a vehicle that left the scene, that left him paralyzed from the waist down.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm always pretty bad at answering my phone. I totally admit that. And I would rather not have the thing near me. But I was notorious. No one could get a hold. They're like, why do you have a phone? I'm like, I don't really know. And I had it off. I don't know, because I hate even answering the landline. And I didn't answer the phone. And so Connor, I didn't know that was happening until my husband came home and said, you aren't answering your phone. Connor's been in an accident. And then my first thought was like, oh my God, I was so not kind to him this morning. That can't be the last thing he hears me say. It just can't. In my mind, I was like, no, I'm going to will him to stay alive until I can see him. Yeah. And I didn't know at that point what had happened, because they just say he's in critical condition. And so fast forward, I see him. And as we were in the room that they put you in to tell you all the crappy stuff that's going on, the doctor at the end was like, I just want you to know you have a great kiddo. And I was like, why does everybody, I've heard that a couple times, and I was nervous, man, they are preparing me for the absolute worst. And I looked at him and I said, can you, I know he's great. I just wonder, why are y'all, are you preparing me for the worst? I'm trying to get myself centered so I don't lose it around him. And he just said he's been asking ever since he got hit, from the women that found him, these beautiful angels that found him. They actually thought he was a deer that got hit. Wow. He got thrown so far. And luckily, because he was kind of in a ditch. So if they didn't see it, and he couldn't reach his phone, I just, like, that's a what if you can't even,
Right.
you know,
Can't.
like,
Oh.
yeah, that's one of those where you're just like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
The universe was on our side, really.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't think you'd say that on that day, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things really, when it could have been worse.
Yeah.
And so he said he hasn't asked about his pain. He hasn't asked why his legs weren't working. He's just constantly on repeat. Have you got a hold of my mom? Have you got a hold of my mom? Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her to forgive me. I was such a brat this morning, and I'm going to be a better son. And
Oh
I
my
still get
gosh.
emotional when I say that, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, oh my God, like, please, he has to know that that was just a moment. That's just a moment in time. And it was a crappy moment, but just a moment. And so then I see him, and, you know, we're both crying and both saying, I'm sorry. And I was just like, stop. That was in the past. We're here right now. You know,
Yeah.
this is amazing. You're here. I have you.
Yeah.
And let's figure this out. And life is going to look way different. Like, we can't deny that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard. I'm not going to deny that either. But I'm going to be beside you, and we're going to have a kick-ass life. We're going to do everything we did before, just in a different way. Get through this surgery, and we'll see you on the other side. And, you know, he came out, and our family has super dark humor, like really dark humor. But some people are like, kind of don't know how to react.
The coping. Yep.
He gets some look. And that next morning, I don't know why we asked him, like, how are you feeling? And he looked up, because that's a dumb question. Of course, he's not going to feel good.
Yeah.
But, you know, he said, like, I got hit by a car. Well, he threw an expletive in there.
Right. Oh, my word.
I just remember laughing and go, okay, he has this humor.
Yeah.
We're going to be all right.
Yeah.
So then that threw me into full-time caregiving. I had to give up the work I was doing and be with him for rehab for two months. And then when he was home going through all that, you know, everything that you go through. And during that period is when I started, and this is always a question that fascinates me.
Yeah.
When you're a caregiver, can you pinpoint like that moment where you start to feel your identity slipping away? You know, where Heather. And I could feel it, and I could see it around everybody around me. When we talked, all we talked about was caregiving. I was like getting aggravated. I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about caregiving. And so me being me, I was like, let's go out and get a drink and have a no caregiver talk zone. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about CAST. I don't want to talk about Bell program. I don't want to talk about any of that. Let's just be
who
us.
We are. Yeah.
You know? And the people that I asked were really kind of like, are we allowed to do that? And that question, that like struck me. I was like, whoa, yeah, like, why wouldn't you be? But I realized not a lot of people realized that, and they were already, the identity was kind of already being sucked out. And that's when I told my husband, I'm like, I'm not sure what I want to do, but it's something for caregivers, and it's not to, I mean, you become a better caregiver because you know yourself and you're setting down all that stuff that we do helps you become it, but we're not going to learn about Medicaid or Medicare or CAS or, you know, any of that stuff.
Right.
We're just going to like find out who we are and make sure we're keeping that and making sure we're being kind and gentle to ourselves. And we all have that. You have trauma from before all of this happened. And if you haven't dealt with that, it compounds how you react to caregiving and how you react to your loved one and everybody around you. And so I just really wanted a healing space and a safe space with no judgment, no politics or religion, just like we're here to heal, we're here to be real and connect, kind of just rediscover who we are and come to that acceptance and then find out how we can move forward. And so then after, they did eventually find the guy that hit Connor. And I worked with restorative justice because I knew for me, forgiveness has been a theme throughout my life that has forgiveness starting internally, because forgiveness always starts with you. I think a lot of people think it starts outward and it's really inward. And you can forgive someone and they never know it, but it's peace for you. And it's kind of that understanding, like I knew. And also, if you can't understand it, like with the guy that hit Connor, I'll never understand why he didn't stop, right? But I understand that it was random. And so that's how I kind of came to understanding for that. I understand it was a random moment. And I'm never going to find out from him why he didn't. And that's okay. Because it was random and it happened. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to accept that. Once I did that, we met through restorative justice, and I let him know I forgave him, and I was forgiving myself, really, truly, for that day, because I failed on all levels as a mom, you know. name it, and I
Felt it.
felt that day.
Yeah.
And so I really had, it was really, truly, I mean, it was for me to forgive, and he was just a byproduct of it. And then after that, that's when I started the Arch and started, it was for caregivers to come together on retreats and then online, things like that, to just dive into us, dive into our trauma, our grief, learn to play again, learn what do we like or what did we like that we don't do, laugh, just have, and then have those connections that, or there's no judgment, all that outside stuff that like blocks the way of you connecting with somebody, but just get rid of that. Like, I ain't gonna deal with that.
Yeah.
And a chance for us to be vulnerable and tell our stories and be heard, right? Like, be truly, truly heard and seen, maybe for the first time ever or in a long time. And then after that, I thought, I was like, oh, okay, you know, we're in this groove, it's going well. And then 2020 hit. Just like all of us, not super fun, but for me, I had chosen to be away from my family quite a while. It was just healthier for me. And my brother called and said, you need to come home. And I knew if he was calling, it was bad. Yeah. And so I talked to my husband, and it's hard for me to be truly healthy around them. So I was super nervous. I was like, oh, you know, I was getting all my I'm like, boundaries.
I need to maintain.
Yeah, it's just like, I can do this. And I get there, and it was really bad. And so that tinge of like guilt, and I need to forgive myself that I haven't been around, it's gotten this bad. So I just went into total caregiver mode where you're setting up. They live in rural, or did live in rural Kentucky, so there's not a lot there. And 3 days in, just all getting everything set up. And on that third day, my father passed by suicide. And so that was, as you can imagine, that's in June. And my mom was in clear cognitive decline, like really bad cognitive decline. Like, I honestly don't know how my parents were surviving. That's how bad it was. Wow. And so, you know, having to do everything that comes after a sudden death like that, and then knowing your mom, I'm like, there's no way she can live here. I don't think our family members that are close are going to be able to do that. So that's came a whole different version of caregiving, because here I am caring for this toxic person that I know is not good for me, even though I know, you know, logically, I know she has trauma that she never dealt with or couldn't. And she did the best she could. I on a logical level, understood that. But then, you know, we experience trauma differently. Our brains experience it, and then our hearts have 40,000 neurons that experience that differently, totally independent of your brain. And then you store it in your body. So those parts were kind of like peeking up, like, I was like, dang, I thought I healed those. Damn it. No.
I thought I've made progress.
It tricked me. So all that coming up, and we brought her back to Colorado. Maddie and the kids wanted me to try. They hadn't quite understood, because they had never been in her life, because that's what I had chosen. And when she came in, it was rough. Like, I thought, this is the thing that's going to implode our family. We have lived through so much, but this is going to be it. And so that's when I went back into that caregiver mode, and I got her in her new home, like within I told my husband, by Thanksgiving, she'll be out. And he's like, that's not going to happen, Heather. And I did it. I was like, watch me.
You're like, I'm motivated.
I will make this happen. And, you know, I got a little flack for it here and there with some people, but I never care what people think about me. It's just like, okay, duly noted. Thanks for that. But for me, it was the safest for me and my family. And it's ended up being really beautiful for her and for, I wouldn't say for us, because I knew there was going to be no reconciliation. Like, I knew I had done the work to forgive, and it was kind of maybe, I don't know, 3 months into her stay, where I went and she was dancing and having so much fun and laughing, and I was like, well, who is this person? Like, I'm like, what drugs are y'all giving her?
Version of
And then I had like a mini breakdown, and this, like in the corner, I was like, just completely lost it. And I had to check in with myself. I'm like, what was that about? Like, Heather, like, I do a lot of talking to myself and trying to like I like to know where things are coming from.
Right. I'm the same way. I'm
Where,
like, okay,
yeah,
let's dig in. Yeah.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's examine this. And so I realized one, it was kind of my inner kiddo being sad that I didn't get that from her. And that was okay. That was normal and good to just let that, not stuff that down and honor that. But then also let my inner kiddo know that, all right, you've been kind of controlling the scene. A lot. It's time for you to go heal and send me back your love and light. And I'm going to move on. Mom's happy. She's
Mm-hmm.
safe. She loves where she's at. And so that's awesome, And when I visit her, it kind of gets her a little aggravated. So maybe I'll back off that. It's not as hard on me. It's not as hard on her. And I'm going to be okay with that.
Right.
And the nursing home is amazing. Yes. Why don't we just try FaceTime? And all these beautiful boundaries. Everybody knows I'm big on the boundaries. And I put that boundary up and it made it just so much. It took all this weight off of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is good, because I took my own crap out of it and I looked what was good for her and realized, oh, actually what's good for her is good for me. And so this works.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal storybook ending, but it's really kind of a beautiful way for her to have her last chapter. And I'm at peace and accept it. And it's great. And I'm so thankful for Adele as her main nurse. And she is just, oh my God, she deserves
yeah, all the medals.
all the medals, right, and some.
Yeah.
So it has just been, I think, caregiving has taught me lots of stuff, but acceptance, understanding, and then being able to let go and not have all that. I think caregivers by nature, because we have to can be kind of control freaks.
Yeah.
But just letting that, sometimes you can't control everything. I mean, if you do, you're going to drive yourself up.
Oh my gosh. So
wall.
Exhausting. It's so exhausting.
So exhausting.
And when you work with families, when you talk about the trauma and those more toxic relationships, I feel like that's more common than those storybook endings.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you're in, I wouldn't say one generation or not, but Gen X, right? That's what I am, the silent or forgotten.
I know, I'm always like, what generation am
I? Is that the other generation? Whatever.
Yeah. I think I'm on a cusp or something. I don't know. Yeah.
You do, especially if you have families that you didn't talk about stuff, or, now it's obviously a different, me and my boys talk about everything. But again, when I was bringing them up, I got judged so harshly for that. But I was like, man, how I grew up, I don't want that. I want to give them that. But yeah, there's so many people that have these toxic relationships, or they aren't good, or they, and they haven't been in. And then it's like this society norm to say you have to take care of them. And you actually don't, you can choose to make sure they're safe and they're well. And, you don't owe anybody any explanation for that. And I think too, that's a sense of shame for people, I didn't get along and now I have to take care of it and make up. No, actually, no, you don't. Why? Who said that?
Right. And the permission to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's more common than not. It's like when my husband has a complete opposite. His family is, amazing. They are kind and loving, and he didn't have any of that growing up. So when he met me, he was like, oh my God.
Whole new world out there.
I was like, I've known this existed, but I didn't know families like yours could exist. So, it's out there, but I think it's more rare to have families like his than not, or at least in,
yeah, we all have our stuff.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you have a family like that, because you're dealing with you're dealing with so much stuff. And again, if you haven't healed, you're dealing with all that hurt and trauma and pain in 3 different parts of your life that it takes a lot of work to heal.
Right. It does. And the superpowers, talk about the superpowers and how they can rebuild us from feeling broken and feeling lost. And for you, was that forgiveness and vulnerability and setting those boundaries. But for me, I know I'm like, well, but how do I actually do that? What would you say to someone that's like, but okay, I hear what you're saying, but how do I actually do that?
How do I put it into action?
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with boundaries first. Like I thought no is a complete sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to justify why you say no to anyone, anywhere, at any time, whether that's in work or whether that's how you're being treated or with the friends, family, whatever it may be. You can always just choose to say no,
Yep.
period. I know some people are like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, well, you can. I didn't say it was going to be easy. Boundaries are hard. They get sticky. You're going to get pushback. You're going to get people that are like, whoa, what's up
Mm-hmm.
with this? And it's on you, right, to use your voice and choice to make that happen. And then the other way I tell people, if you want to like ease people in, a great way is that, hey, I'm going to try on my lunch break, it's going to be tech free and no notifications.
Mm.
I really appreciate you supporting me in this because I need your support to make this happen. So you're kind of twisting it on them. So they're going to, they kind of feel like a jackass and be like, no, not supporting you, that. Whoop, done. And you might have people that do that. And you just be like, well, maybe right now, that's when you have to take and assess, is this person really good for me in my life? And if they're not, what do I do about it? And so that's where you just have to stick to your guns. And I have a calendar decline for those people that are wanting to pick, lunch is sacred to me. I'm not going to do it. And just automatically decline their meetings. And then that's your boundary and they can't cross it, right?
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah. And so just take stock of what is it that you feel is a little bit that's having you spin, whether that's emotionally or physically. And there's one way you could put a boundary on it. Let's see, the lunchroom was big for me. I started just recently letting people know I'm only going to check notifications at 8 a.m., at 1, and then again at 4. Thanks for your patience. I will get back to you after I've read this message,
I like that.
And so then those are like little things that we're all just like inundated, but you can be like, wait, I have control over that. I think sometimes we feel like we don't have control over a lot, but when you stop and you be like, oh, wait, I do have control on how many times I check my message. If I turn my notifications off, if I let people know ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to get back to you right that second, because this is when I check my notifications, then you're telling them, they know, and you've set your boundaries on it. And then again, it's on you to do it. If you get that pushback, it's just kind of staying true to it. And people do get used to those new habits. Just at first, you are going to get a lot of pushback from people. And they might say things, and that's where you kind of have to just be like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to trust myself and know that this is what I need. And thank you for supporting me. I really appreciate it. And just start small. Start maybe with one boundary if it's hard for you.
Yeah.
And then when you stick to it, like really give yourself like, oh my God, I did it. I'm so proud. I'm going to go get a milkshake. Like,
what's that? Like positive reinforcement. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. And then thank those people around you too that help support that. But I really want to thank you, because then that's going to make them feel good too. Maybe you didn't like it at first, but if they stuck with it, then it's just this, it's like kind of focusing on adding positive habits instead of, we always focus on, oh man, I drank more ginger ale today. That's always mine. I've given up. I'm never going to quit ginger ale.
Oh my God, I love ginger ale. I just bought a case when I was telling you, but I wasn't feeling well earlier. I was like, that's my go-to. I'm like, I can't ever let that go. And I had heard something too where the people that get most bothered by the boundaries we set are the ones that we need to have the boundaries even more, where it's like that is going to really irritate them because we've never been able to do that in that dynamic. And so that's something that tells us, okay, I have to look at that because that's where I really need to put that in place out of protection for myself.
Absolutely. And whether that's in your work or home or friend, whatever it is, people that really push back on those boundaries, that's where you kind of need to, that's what I said, like assess, kind of like, and most of the time, like it's their issue, whether they are micromanaging or, all that kind of stuff. And it's not on you to make them feel better, right? Like I can never control how someone's going to react to it, but I can control how I'm going to react to it. And it's like, okay, I'm going to react to this by not getting in like fighting with you. I'm just going to reinforce, thank you again for supporting. This is what I need. And these are the boundaries. You can keep repeating that until they do or don't get it.
Yeah. And I love the tools you mentioned. I think sometimes we don't always know, like, well, what is a good boundary I could even implement, or where do I even start? And just like doing those things that we can start with, or just even having like the idea of what's an option of a boundary. The other is forgiveness. Like, how did you, when people are working with families, we're most hard on ourselves, and how do we even begin to forgive ourselves for things or let that go?
I think the first start is just kind of, again, forgiveness that always starts with kind of understanding, like, okay, accepting and understanding, and then that let go. So for me, right, being aware and knowing, like, let's just take I mean, I have a couple of big examples, but we'll go back to the guy that hit Connor. And like, the boys really wanted to know why. They're stuck on why.
Mm.
And that was holding them from forgiving and letting go. And I just said, well, what if you never find out why? How do you feel about that?
Mm.
Well, I'm really aggravated and angry. I need to know. I'm like, sometimes we don't get to know the why. And that's okay. Sometimes the why keeps us from moving forward.
Yeah.
We're just stuck there, right?
Yeah.
And so with yourself, if you have things you need to forgive yourself, is one, like, show a little self compassion. Like, talk to yourself as you would a girlfriend or friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you're being kind of hard on yourself. Like, you were just human there, and that's okay. If it's really a sticking point with you, why don't you just tell your body and your heart and mind, I'm ready to let go of that. And just that one, and keep telling yourself that. And eventually you're going to get to that point where, wait, I am actually ready to let go of that. And then name it. And then write a letter to yourself. Dear Heather, I forgive you for blah, 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 blah. Not to
Yeah.
be a tree. Look, no, I forgive you for XYZ1 because you're only human.
Mm-hmm.
And then start with like lessons learned from that. And if you hadn't taken the moment to figure out what those lessons are, it's a great moment because you realize, oh, wait, I did learn that the hard way, but I learned it. And then when you get to that point is just voicing it and naming it. I really want to forgive myself. And you write it. And something that helps your body kind of release it is, write it and then burn it in a controlled area. Don't burn down a forest. Like, do it in your house. Don't burn down your house. Like,
Yeah.
make sure you do it nice and
Safety
controlled.
notice. Yeah.
Yeah. Burn and let that go and know that. And if you want to try to understand, like, why did I react that way? Why did I do that? But again, use it with a gentleness and a kindness. So just kind of like, I'm not going to judge myself for that.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I did. And then accept, like, okay, I did that, but I am willing to move on now and forgive myself, because not forgiving me is just like, it's causing this hurt. And then I do want to get past it. And then just accept, okay, I did that and I learned this and I'm ready to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, it again, always start internally, because if you're waiting on forgiveness, let's say somebody did something to you and you're waiting on them to get like the punishment, or for them to come say, I'm sorry, you can't control that and you may never get it. So you're going to let them. It's kind of like, for me, it's always been getting my power back.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I don't forgive, they have that. They have a lot of power over you,
Mm-hmm.
whether you intended for it to happen or not. And I'm pretty stingy on my power. I'm like, I don't need that back. You
Yep. I need all I can get.
do not get that.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So just,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes work, and too, being, again, gentle on yourself, because it's a journey. It's not going to happen after a couple journal entries.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're going to have to keep coming back to it. And once you feel that understanding and acceptance, then you're like, oh, okay, I got that. And then you'll realize it's kind of gone.
Yeah.
And then that's when you really be like, and just constantly checking in with yourself and realizing you cannot control, I'll say that over and over, anybody else or how they react. You can only control how you're going to choose to react to a situation.
Right.
And whether or not you're willingly giving your power over and over again to people.
Yeah.
And just be gentle and kind to yourself.
And the patience. Have patience with ourselves.
Yeah.
Brutifully Beautiful is really a movement. I know it's also your foundation and it's a nonprofit, but it's a movement. And I love the focus. Like you said, we're so much more, and we're going to talk about that too. The So Much More campaign. And in those moments, in the hard moments, in the beautiful moments, I want to hear from like your words, the movement that's happening, and how it's changing lives and the retreats that you're putting together so people can find how they can feel supported by what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. In my words, oh Lord. I did not prepare for this.
It's okay.
I
We go
should.
off the cuff.
I would say it kind of goes back to those things that have been, I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to give them tools and be like, what speaks to you? What do you feel like our bodies, if we listen, whether that's emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is, are telling us constantly what we need.
Mm-hmm.
We are just, and especially in a society where we're inundated with so much, we don't listen.
Right.
And so, like my body's telling me this. Why am I getting anxious here? Well, your body's telling you something. So maybe step back and be like, okay, assess it. Like, what is going on? What is that happening? I wanted a space where you can just take all that external stuff out for a second, be in a really safe space, be vulnerable, where you're encouraged to be vulnerable and you're encouraged to use your voice, you're encouraged to participate. The choice is still on you. Mm-hmm. But it's really rare that we don't have someone participate. And even if you say, I'm going to choose not to share right now, what have you just done? You set a boundary, you used your choice, and you used your voice. And a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I'm
good.
like, yeah. I made you speak. You don't have to tell me, but you do have to use your voice. You do have to use your choice, and you have to tell me like what boundary you're setting right now. And so most of us don't feel like, at least from what I've observed, a lot of us feel like we don't have permission to do that ever.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted that, and again, to take away the space where it's just this bubble of healing and where you're with people that get it, whether that's just a women's retreat for anybody, or if that's for just caregivers. Like, we're talking about the part of caregiving that people don't talk about a lot, like, I'm going to admit that I can't stand my loved one right now. Yeah. And I feel guilt and shame about that. And it's like, okay, thanks for sharing, but talk to me about that. Like, why do you feel that? And one, that's not bad. Again, you're human. We all feel guilt and shame. Yeah. Just when we're in the caregiver role, we're kind of, I don't know if it's programmed or what, that we're not supposed to have those feelings.
Right,
and it's like,
right. But
you
totally do, yeah.
That's not checked. Unless you're a robot, you're going to feel that. Again, that's human. Like, we're all part of that. And so to be able to, one, feel safe, have those external things away, have people ask you about you, because there we don't, like, especially in our circle ups, it's like we're not talking about caregiving. And if people do that, I'm just like, hey, thanks for sharing, that's awesome, but I'm gonna circle you back to here. Tell me about you. And that is usually that first day, it's like deer in the headlights. Those caregivers are like, whoa, no one really asked me about that. I'm not quite sure how I feel. And I'm like, well, that right there is that big step. You just became aware. Yeah. Right? Your awareness of that is huge. And so, one, for us to just take a moment and acknowledge all of our feels and not feel bad about it with no judgment, and know that it's there, whether that's anger or rage or guilt or shame or sadness and missing. And often I ask people in the interview, who do you miss? And I have never once had one person say, I miss myself.
Oh, wow.
Not one time. Wow. And we have had like thousands of applications. I keep waiting. Maybe now people are like, oh, Heather's coming.
Oh, I can say that because it's true. Yeah.
But, right? I'm like, one day somebody's going to say that. I was like, not yet. But one day. Because when they get there, that's what comes out. I really miss me. I don't know where I went. And I didn't know I was allowed to miss myself. And again, I'm always like, oh, man. It just makes me just want to give everybody a hug and be like, yes, you can. You can have all these feelings. I don't know why we don't think we can. And then to work on that grief and trauma, and then that forgiveness mainly of self. And then it's really important to me, like, I like to have fun and to learn to play again, to laugh. There's so much laughter. There was all this crying and there's so much laughter. And everybody's like, I forgot I knew how to laugh. Like, I literally haven't had a belly laugh. And I love it. It makes me feel so good. Yeah. And playing the watch, just like be it. Like, it's really beautiful to be alive, and we sometimes forget that, and we forget the small moments, like, and so to be able to have that with people and feel safe to do it, where like, you're not gonna, I don't know, get made fun of or any of that stuff, but and then kind of how to reset and rewire and fire your brain with those negative patterns that we're in, and how to kind of just regain that power and be like, wait, you know what? I got this, but then give you tools and reset and how you're gonna have your narrative again to go back into with all those external. And just people just really owning their voices and their stories and not being ashamed of it. And knowing that you can heal. I think a lot of people think it takes a lot of work to heal, but we can heal so much of ourselves just by doing the work ourselves. And our body wants to heal, our heart wants to heal, our body is there like trying to get our attention, like, hey, that's sucking because I need you to give some TLC to this part. And so just that quiet space to learn to listen, know it's okay to put yourself first. You have permission. And I think sometimes it is just people saying, I give you permission.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that is necessarily the movement, but it's also to get people to like feel good with their voice and own their stories and tell them and share them and know that vulnerability is essential for growth. And it's beautiful. And it's a way for us to connect. And again, with that play and kind of resetting and rewiring how you think about things, and then ultimately connection to self and connection to others.
Yeah.
And then the biggest is connection to nature. They're all tech free. We don't do any tech. I mean, our staff has to, which is, I tell people I'm super jealous. I'm like, oh, I would get any.
I would rather not be the one
that has to have the phone on me all the time. Yeah. And that is always amazing too, because people are like, freak out and like, oh my God, I'm like, they literally have 20 ways to get a hold of us.
Right. You're good. Yeah, you can do it.
And then at the end of it, they're like, oh my God, I don't want my phone back. I'm like, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and it's these like research-based healing and nature, and oh my gosh, we need to do that more than we do and step outside of our normal routine and environment. And then you also have, I love like the support groups and the cocktails and conversation that you do, and just in other ways people can get together and find what's happening, and just people to listen and share the good and the bad and all the things.
Yeah. So we have guides. We have a guide after you're on a retreat. They'll stick with you and they'll check in monthly and set up meetings with your group, because the group usually gets really close, right?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
All the stuff that you don't normally share with people. And so the guide will stay with you. And then here in April, we have a course online that comes that you can take as a group afterwards or on your own, whatever. And then, we have those coffee for caregivers and cocktails for caregivers, and just touch base and have a moment where you, again, can, be seen and heard, and share that moment with people that get it, where you just have that space. And I think that connection is just so important to not feel isolated, because everybody, it might not be the same journey, but they'll get it. Like this one woman said, she said, I didn't know how I was going to be able to relate to someone that had Alzheimer's that was taking care, because my husband has brain injury. And by the end of it, she's like, oh my God, I relate to like everybody here.
Wow.
It's not different. And I was like, yeah. And that's the magic too. It's not just one, like it's not people with spinal cord injury or brain, it's everybody in all different ages, at all different stages. Everybody that is a guide is a caregiver or has been one. So we get it. We didn't just read it in the book. I mean, no offense if you did, just saying.
Right. Yeah. We're in it.
Like they get it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it too, is finding your people that get it.
And the So Much More campaign that is growing out of that whole, we're so much more, and not losing our identity while we're in it. Are you finding, are people receptive to it and are excited to share what?
Yeah, they are. And it's just starting to really get going. We haven't pushed it up, but we're starting to push it now. And the biggest thing is that people were like, again, it's that loss of identity. They're like, oh my gosh, I forgot when I sat down to think about how am I so much more. There's actually a lot more to me. And it's to get us just, and everybody else around us, to be aware. Like, yes, caregiving, and also give us permission, maybe reframe how, like, hey, I love that you're asking about caregiving, but do you mind when we talk, you ask about me first? Like, because I maybe don't, or I want to go out and I'm going to have a no caregiver talk zone, because I am so much more than a caregiver, right? Like I have all these different things that make me. So one is an awareness for caregivers themselves, like, hey, take a sec. Think about all the different ways that make you. It's
Yeah.
not just caregiving. Or if that is where you are right now, think about, okay, wait, I used to like reading, I used to like going on a hike, like all those different things, and start adding one in to be like, wait, I do deserve to be so much more. I'm not just a caregiver. And so that's where that came from. And yeah, it's kind of fun to see people kind of come to that realization, like, oh, wait, I do have a lot more to offer than just like being a caregiver. And that's kind of cool. And I'm going to do this. So it's been fun to listen to everybody kind of
share their
hear
story.
so much more.
How can we donate? Like, where can we learn more? How can we support what you guys are up to?
You can go on our website, and it's www.brutallybeautiful.life. And then it's like brutally.beautiful.life on Instagram.
Okay. I'll include the links on the episode description too, so people can just go.
Like, I don't know. You can find everywhere. You can find us on the website.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. We were going to record live at the conference, and I always think things are meant to happen when they're supposed to happen. So while we could spend a lot of time together, we're meant to talk right now, and I'm so thankful that you are here and you're giving us permission to be vulnerable and forgive ourselves and set some really good boundaries. So thank you.
Well, thanks for you for getting those stories out there and you just have this beautiful, pure, generous spirit that makes it easy to talk with. So thank you for being that and holding that space for people.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I'm so glad we did it. Yay, we did it. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.